I'm Andrew Lerner, a proud Navy veteran, small business owner, and representative serving the people of East Hillsborough County in the Florida House. Floridians have been through an extraordinarily tough year. We've lost loved ones, jobs, and income. Thousands of our local small businesses have closed, and every single Florida family has been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. And you've been doing your part. You distanced alone, away from friends and family. You went to work and braved the disease for jobs that, while essential, paid little. Stood for racial justice while condemning violent mobs that attacked our small businesses and ultimately our U.S. Capitol. Now more than ever, Floridians demand our leaders come together to work on the shared problems we face. But that is just not what we heard today. Instead of helping hardworking Floridians with common sense solutions, we heard an agenda that was driven by pettiness, imaginary threats, and settling partisan political scores. This is a time for leadership, a plan to get COVID-19 under control, to deliver relief for Florida's families, and build back our economy better. Over the next few minutes, you'll hear from legislators who, like myself, understand the problems you and your family are facing. We are in your state capitol right now, fighting for you. This is the people's response to the State of the State address.
My husband is permanently disabled. He's been diagnosed with a condition called congestive heart failure. I also have a teenage daughter with me. She just turned 17. And now I have my mom, who just turned 83, living with me. I'm the only person in my family who's working right now. Since the pandemic, I have gone from having 4 classes to having 1. I was on unemployment last summer because I don't get summer classes most of the time. So I was on unemployment. Florida pays like $200 and some dollars a week at the most that you can get. So, but even with all that, when you have to pay rent on a 3-bedroom apartment and you got to feed 4 people and you got to make sure that everybody gets their medication and get to the doctor and all of that money goes just like that. So applying was kind of iffy because you went on and then you were in line online for a certain period of time. And please don't have to get up and leave your computer for any reason, because if you're not there when your turn comes, they will skip you and you have to start the process all over again. I've worked years. I've never been afraid of work. At a time where our country is going through a pandemic, and I do have some health issues that my doctors kind of want me to stay as close to home as possible, as much as possible. So I wasn't able to just go out and get another job. And then people weren't even hiring because of the pandemic. So I had no choice but to rely on unemployment.
Hi, this is Representative Anna V. Escamani, proudly serving District 47 in the Florida Legislature, which includes Orlando, Winter Park, Belle Isle, and Edgewood. As hundreds and thousands of Floridians were personally devastated with the loss of their job and no fault of their own, with bills bearing down on them, they were left to deal with a horribly broken unemployment system. The website crashed, phone calls were not answered, and calls were never returned. Beaten down, exhausted, and often desperate, thousands of Floridians throughout the state reached out to my legislative office for help. We did everything we could to get folks paid. I'm proud to say we've gotten more than 20,000 hardworking Floridians their benefits and their relief checks who desperately needed it. But it was far from easy and it was far from enough. No one should ever have to go through this again. That's why my colleagues and I have introduced legislation to raise the weekly unemployment benefit amount from the ridiculous $275 a week to a more reasonable $500 a week. We've increased the eligibility period from the sliding scale to 26 weeks to match the national average. And we have finally provided in this bill oversight of the unemployment system. To date, neither Governor Ron DeSantis nor Republican leaders in the legislature have offered to fix our unemployment woes. Instead, they are following the lead of powerful corporate interests, putting the profits of their donors before the people of this great state. They even rejected our call for a special legislative session last summer to deal with this issue when it first came up. If you're a Floridian struggling with unemployment or know someone who is, know that we are fighting for you this legislative session.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Nero, and I currently live in St. Petersburg, and I also currently attend the University of South Florida, and I work part-time as an intern for a law firm in downtown Tampa. Up until recently, I had worked at public supermarkets for 6 years. It would be unfair to not raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour for people under the age of 21 because you are essentially exploiting a whole class of workers, specifically college students and teenagers in high school who need that money. That would prepare so many people better for college to make a living wage. It would help college students a lot with paying for books, paying for rent. A lot of us are financially independent. We don't rely on our parents. And that would just actually help the student debt crisis. So I don't see why we can't raise the minimum wage for $15 for everybody. So yeah, every single Floridian, whether it be a person under the age of 21 or a former felon, should be paid a living wage. Stop exploiting workers and take care of your constituents.
I'm Representative Angie Nixon, and I proudly represent the people of North Jacksonville in the Florida House. More than 60% of Florida voters voted in the last election to increase Florida's minimum wage to $15 an hour. Let's be clear, working class Floridians are long overdue for a raise. This is not about the Zoom class, this is about the working class, the essential people who have carried the state through this pandemic. The cost of everything from food to housing to transportation has gone up, but Floridians' wages sure haven't. Meanwhile, Governor DeSantis has continued the terrible tradition of Republican leaders who've run state government for decades, wasting billions of dollars in corporate tax giveaways and subsidies that have done nothing for our paychecks. Not only did they oppose the minimum wage amendment this year, Republicans are adding insult to injury, proposing to exclude workers under 21, the disabled, and people who have paid their debt to society from the new minimum wage increase. Instead of holding bad corporate actors accountable for discriminatory hiring practices, they are letting them write the rules. This creates a group of second-class citizens, and it is wrong. Let's build a Florida where anyone working full-time can thrive, not fight to survive, but flourish. My colleagues and I are fighting for you during this legislative session to end poverty wages and enact the will of Florida voters who overwhelmingly passed the $15 minimum wage.
Last year, I lost my job due to the pandemic. Even before COVID, I struggled every month to pay rent, went without seeing a doctor when I needed to, and lived paycheck to paycheck. It's an insult on top of injury for people who are struggling right now and are forced to rely on our state for support because they have nowhere else to go. The governor still refuses to expand Medicaid, which would change my life right now, and millions of others like me. At the same time, our state is trying to make tax cuts permanent for corporations. So while I skip doctor's visits because I'm broke, we are trying to find ways to raise less revenue for the services we need more than ever. I was born in Florida and I've lived here all my life, so this situation is nothing new to me and my family. It's always been a struggle for residents here. But this pandemic has changed things. I'm done with the status quo. It's time for people to demand more from our state and the governor. We rank last in almost every spending category, except for our prisons. Having lived here my whole life, I wanted to say that I don't want to go back to normal in Florida. There should be no normal in our state after COVID-19.
I'm Senator Annette Taddeo, and I proudly represent the people of Miami-Dade County in the Florida Senate. I'm here to tell you something Governor DeSantis and Republican legislators won't. Healthcare is a right, and therefore you and your loved ones should never face financial difficulties for taking care of your health. A severe illness should never threaten you with bankruptcy. We clearly have a state legislature with a hearing problem. My Democratic colleagues and I hear you loud and clear. First, I have filed legislation that would expand access to health coverage under Medicaid to 1 million Floridians who typically work full-time jobs but can't afford private insurance. Next, we are working to check the power of pharmaceutical companies and make prescription drug prices reasonable for everyday Floridians. And finally, we intend to work with the Biden administration and the Democratic Congress to improve the quality and reliability of healthcare plans many of you already rely on, while at the same time lowering your costs. While Governor DeSantis and Republican legislators continue to turn a deaf ear and do nothing to improve healthcare for Floridians, my Democratic colleagues and I will be fighting for you, the people.
I'm State Senator Vic Torres. I proudly represent the people of Osceola and South Orange County in the Florida Senate. The affordable housing shortage is one of the biggest challenges Floridians face right now. There are few things more important to any of us than a safe place to be with our loved ones and to rest our head each night. Tragically, while rents and the cost of housing have skyrocketed in every community throughout Florida, Governor DeSantis and Republicans in the legislature have done nothing. In fact, last year, the governor vetoed $225 million from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund while giving away $500 million to the biggest corporations in the state. The devastation of COVID-19 brought the hardworking people and their families has only made the crisis worse. Our state tenant laws are too weak and many families still face evictions. Despite President Biden's efforts to protect them, we have to take action right now. My colleagues and I will fight any effort to raid the State Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We urge the governor to veto any budget that raids even $1 from this fund. Finally, it's long past the state of Florida to protect tenants and not just landlords. We have introduced legislation to allow our local cities and counties to place clear limits on how much a landlord can raise your rent. We have filed legislation to ensure tenants can have their day in eviction court without needing to deposit the money the landlord claims is due, to prohibit future discrimination based on COVID-19 evictions, and to ensure we have the dollars for the legal representation of civil cases such as evictions. If you're a Floridian who is worried about your housing, know that my colleagues and I see you, we hear you, and we have your back. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mileika Burgos Flores, and I am the Executive Director of the Alapata Collaborative CDC, a nonprofit organization and place-based initiative in Miami, Florida that uses the Main Street approach to revitalize our commercial corridor as we mitigate climate gentrification pressures. Our small businesses sustain and invest in our vulnerable communities. They now face displacement despite decades of sweat equity and community investment. The COVID-19 pandemic, as well as many years of disinvestment and unfair tax laws, have had an outsized and profound impact on smaller, locally owned businesses. Many businesses have been forced to close, and others are hanging on by a thread. Yet, more than 2/3 of the state's spending to support economic development in the private sector goes to large companies, not to the small businesses, despite the fact that those large companies have far more resources than hundreds of thousands of small businesses across the state, and the small businesses provide a lot more jobs than those large corporations. Large corporations got $543 million in tax refund during the pandemic, and only $50 million in loans was allocated for the hundreds of thousands of struggling small businesses. Less than 1,000 companies actually got access to that lifeline. That is very unfair. I urge our elected leaders to revamp the tax code, improve microbusiness support, and ensure community investment is more inclusive, equitable, and responsive to small business needs. We count on your support.
Hi, I'm Representative Carlos Guillermo Smith, and I proudly represent Orlando in the Florida House. Every year as legislators, we have one constitutional mandate: pass a budget for Florida. Our state budget is a lot more than a long list of numbers. It's a statement of our values as Floridians, what we want to do and where we want to go. This year, we're working to give residents the tools they need to have a voice in the budget process like never before. Right now, you can go to peoplesbudgetflorida.org and take a quiz that will allow you to tell Tallahassee and Governor DeSantis what your values and priorities are. This year, we face a $2 billion budget deficit, and we need to treat this problem as an opportunity to finally rearrange our state's priorities and put government back on your side. For decades, Republicans who have controlled our state government have prioritized giving more money to the biggest corporations and more power to their biggest donors. Floridians who send their children to public schools, struggle to afford health care, and keep a roof over their heads have been left with the bill. This year, my colleagues and I are saying enough. First, we've introduced legislation to end billions in useless corporate tax giveaways that don't create jobs or increase your paycheck. You pay your taxes. Big businesses in Florida should too. We'll also stop and reverse taxpayer giveaways to unaccountable private voucher schools. We'll use those savings to stop any cuts to our neighborhood public schools, access to life-saving healthcare, or badly needed funds to build affordable housing. And we'll go further. Let's repeal the destructive and unnecessary multi-billion-dollar roads to ruin boondoggle. Let's finally legalize, safely regulate, and tax recreational cannabis. Let's stop locking up first-time nonviolent offenders and allow for compassionate release of elderly inmates in our state prisons who pose no threat to society, and other common sense criminal justice reforms that are not only the right thing to do, but would save Floridians another $1 billion. We'll use those savings where it counts, investing in our small businesses, improving our public schools and colleges, modernizing roads and infrastructure, and creating jobs that actually pay a living wage. Finally, Governor DeSantis should urge our U.S. Senators Marco Rubio and Rick Scott to support President Biden's American Rescue Plan, which would provide billions in needed relief for state and local budgets. That's a budget for Florida that reflects the hopes, dreams, and values of all Floridians, not just the privileged few. That's a government that works for you, not the elite few. That's the Florida we're fighting for.
This has been the people's response to Governor DeSantis' State of the State address. Last year was tough, but this year Florida has an incredible opportunity to emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic stronger, fairer, and freer than we were before. COVID held up a mirror to our society. It showed us all the tremendous unfairness and exhausting challenges faced by so many Floridians. The pandemic also showed us how tough, caring, and resilient Floridians are, despite the uncaring indifference of Governor DeSantis and legislative leadership. We have the power to make Florida into a state that works for all Floridians. As you've just heard, the solutions are there. If you don't know who your state representative and state senator are, you can look them up at myfloridahouse.gov. Put their office number in your phone or on your refrigerator so that you're ready to contact your legislator about the issues you care about most. Check in with them regularly over the next 2 months of legislative session. Government only works when it's of, by, and for the people. If enough Floridians take action, we can't be ignored. Thanks for watching, and thanks for being an engaged Floridian.